Hello, Burlington. I am Burlington Mayor Marianne Mead Ward, and welcome to another edition of Burlington Matters, where we bring local community groups and organizers and leaders to talk about what matters to you here in Burlington. And we have two very special guests again today. We're doing this as we always do virtually. And our guests are joining virtually. So I'd like to introduce you to Noah Bowen and to Tajaune Saunders. These two individuals were the organizers behind the Solidarity March that we had in early June. Part of marches that happened around the world in response to the horrific killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, where many folks may know my family is from there, and I spent a year studying there in university, and so I know the community well and know the issues. But this has sparked a global conversation around racism and what all of us have to do around equity, inclusion, and diversity, and especially combating racism, and especially combating Black racism. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I just want to turn it right over to you, Noah, and Tajaune, to walk us through what prompted you to organize the march, and tell us a little bit about your background and what brought us all here today, and thousands of people coming out on June 4th.
Okay, so as you guys heard, my name is Tajaune Saunders. I grew up in Burlington. For a long time, I saw racism within the system and just active racism. And for a long time, I never thought anything was gonna change about it. So me, Noah, Isabella got together and we decided to design a march, the anti-racism, like anti-Black racism march in Burlington. And we kind of it took a lot of preparation, took a lot of time out of our day to think on how we're gonna do this, how we're gonna combat it. Like, I remember Noah originally started with a sign on the side of the road, right? And then I texted Noah, I'm like, hey man, what should we like? I think we should do more. I think we should step up and like maybe design a march. And Noah was for it. So then we ended up doing the march, and it actually showed me change, because it's like I saw white, Black, every single ethnicity there in regards to supporting us Black people and the hardships we go through. Noah, you have more to say on that?
Yeah. Also, part of the reason we started it was because we know our city, Burlington, is not as bad as other cities. So there was no point in taking an aggressive stance that would be like rioting or anything like that. We knew that if we just come together, maybe as one, as two, three, four, maybe the fifth and sixth person will come in as well. And Burlington showed out like tenfold. So yeah, we kind of just wanted to spread awareness. Our main goal was to spread awareness that as much as it's on the media being shown as it's only in America, it's behind closed doors in our cities as well.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, Tajaune.
I was gonna say, like, and the problem is people don't believe that racism exists in Canada, right? People don't even believe racism exists in Burlington, right? So like that's kind of like a partial reason why we decided to do the march, because racism does exist in Burlington. Like, Burlington has come a long way, but it still has a long way to go. When it comes to knowing racism, how to deal with it, you have to look at the individual level, micro, and the community level, macro. So I'll give you some examples of micro and macro, right? So here's a theme for it: alien and own land. So when Asian Americans and Latino Americans are assumed to be foreign born, where are you from? That's a microaggression, right? Where are you from? Because they're assuming that you're not American and you are a foreigner. Here's another one: color blindness, right? When they look at you, I don't see color, right? That's denying a person of their color, racial, ethnic experiences, right? Here's another one: a white man or a white woman clutching their purse as a Black or Latino approaches them or passes. That's another version of microaggression. You are a criminal. You're gonna steal. You are poor. You don't belong, and you are dangerous. So that's an example of microaggression. Macro would be more the community, so the systematic. As a whole, us as a community would be a macroaggression. So like, for example, all of us looking at each other as, okay, so there's white people, they're at the top of the food chain. There's Black people at the lower. Any ethnic group except white is at the bottom. That would be a macro aggression. Does that make sense? Okay. Noah, I want you to tell me some of your experiences for microaggression. Like, what would be a good experience for you?
Well, I've had microaggressions. I've had like on Father's Day, like people ask me like is your dad around, or like things like that's usually the one I face the most, like just like the father one, like, oh, your dad's around, like things like that, like because people usually think black parents aren't, like black fathers don't stick around. Like that's a stereotype. Like, I mean, it does happen, but like not only are black men getting a lot better, but in Burlington, I see a lot of happy black families, like all the way around. So like I find in Burlington that's a microaggression. Finding like people asking where you're from, like where are you actually from, like they're like, you know, like where are you from, being left out. I'm born and raised in Canada, you know what I mean? But like, where are you actually from? Then I have to go to, oh, I mean my parents are from here and here, and like it shouldn't have to go there. But like, yeah.
Exactly.
And those are questions that, yeah, just to jump in and then I'll turn it back to you, Tajaune, but those are questions I don't get as
Yeah.
a white woman here in this country. Nobody's ever asked me if I have a father, or if their father is in my house, or, you know, so I can't even imagine what it's like to constantly absorb that kind of stereotype. And it is a stereotype. Go ahead,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Tajaune.
And touching on what you were saying though, right? That microaggression, like after, like even after we did the march, right? Things haven't changed. And I'll give you an example right now.
Mm.
So I don't know if you heard, but if you looked at the girls who were rollerblading on New Street the other day, on Walker's Line in New Street, an older white man aggressively comes at the girls and starts calling the one light skinned girl the N-word. Ironically, the same area we just started protesting, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like those girls faced microaggression. It like from that day, it was a form of racism. We as black people face such a stressor every day, which is caused by false and colonized beliefs. Okay. Um, that are systematically embedded throughout all systems. It's not just America. It's not just Canada. It's us as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
It's embedded in our system. In our system, it's been embedded within. So like,
It was taught. It was taught. Over time, it's been taught. But I do 100% see generations coming together to make a difference, and also prior generations understanding, oh, you know what, maybe I was wrong. I didn't see it in that lens then, but now I'm starting to open my eyes up and see it in a different light. I do. I agree with Tajaune, but I kind of disagree with there hasn't been any change, because I have noticed just in my like everyday living since the march, being out in the store and everything, like just shopping at Fortino's, like people are, like, this is odd to say, but people are just a lot more comfortable with me being around. It seems like I haven't really felt like anyone being like, oh, this guy's like, who's like, you know, like I dress in athletic wear, so people think I'm
Got it.
intimidating. Yeah, but lately, like, I think that march really did change a lot of people's mind and start making people think, you know what, I'm going to be on this side of change, and that's the way I want to go with it.
And I wouldn't say comfortable, no. In regards to change, I would say scared.
Yeah, that's true.
They're afraid to do anything because they know people are watching.
Yeah,
Now
that's true.
the light's on us. The light's on us. So they're not going to follow throughout stores. They're not going to act on things like calling us the N-word, or they're not going to say any stereotypes because they're scared. They're scared to be filmed. They're scared to be shown on live TV that they're saying things like that. So I understand where you're coming from in regards to change. Like you feel less of a like double consciousness in a sense, but at the same time, it's like if we never organized marches and marches like this weren't happening right now, right? I feel like it would still be on us. It would still be able to follow us throughout the stores. Like I've had
I
experience.
understand.
I had experiences when I went to like Walmart.
Yeah.
It was fun. A business, like it's like a multicultural owned business, right? It's everywhere. It's in America, Canada, China, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everywhere. And I was followed with throughout the store just because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Like things like that.
No, it's brutal.
Things like that. And like,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, clearly very unacceptable behavior, and I do think you're right that the spotlight and the focus is now on that type of behavior. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts around social media. Has it helped the cause of exposing racism, bringing people together? You know, you mentioned that people are potentially afraid because they know that it could end up online. And we've seen, examples from the US, but also Canada. I mean, you mentioned right here in Burlington that video. There was another story I heard about a couple of days after the march, and I posted the story without this woman's name, but she was a Muslim down in Spencer Smith Park and asked a man to put his dog back on a leash, and he told her to, quote, go back where she came from. And but that is, yeah, that's that's been recorded, and so that, to the degree that this individual can be identified, there is a social response to that. So so in your mind, has social media and the ability to have that video out there, has that changed anything? Will it change anything? Interested in your thoughts.
Okay, no, go first.
Okay, so before I touch on if social media has changed anything, I want to touch on just the fact that he said, what's it called? Go back to where you came from.
Yeah.
When you think about it, everyone is a immigrant from somewhere else, unless you are First Nations, Indigenous.
Absolutely.
Like if you're not First Nations, like what's called from Ojibwe, all that type of stuff, right? You cannot classify yourself as Canadian born. We are all immigrants. So like
exactly.
in terms of that, like European colonizers came here and took from them. So no one should be able to tell someone go back to your country, because we are all from a different country, whether you want to believe it or not.
Excellent point. Absolutely.
And to touch on the social media component, yes, social media has helped in a sense of this. It's more like people are more afraid to say the things that they think, because they know they're being recorded, and people are being more sensitive to the fact. They always say our generation's the most sensitive generation, but I don't think we're the most sensitive. We're the most sensible.
I gotta agree with that. You're focused on the right things.
We see things in a different light, and we look at things, and we're not afraid to speak our mind, right? So in regards to social media aspect, it has helped us. So like, it has helped us and it has hurt us, because it helps us understand like what's really going on within the world, but it hurts us in a sense where like the news focuses more on Black violence than why they're doing the things they're doing. So that's my take.
Right. Well, yes, that for sure has been an issue in the coverage. Noah, did you want to add anything to how social media has helped or hindered in the effort to end racism?
Yeah, I think it's had pros and cons. I think the pros have been that it's spread awareness. Like the continuous awareness is great. I think information being shared is great, but where it's hurt us is now our generation. Is where we just scroll through threads. So it's almost like propaganda. I can post something with a thread, and I can tell you certain bits of information, but the real information that would help you is at the very end. And some people might not even make it past the third, but they're going to share it because they feel like they have to. Me, as a Black person, I didn't partake in Blackout Tuesday, because to me personally, that doesn't do anything. And like I get people want to show support by posting a black screen, but what we really have to understand as a people now is that it's not about color. We're the pointing fingers is done. We're past that. We're at the point of making solutions. So the more we talk about who's to blame, like everybody knows, like there's certain groups to blame. There's like, it's both sides. You have to understand that it's both sides, because there's the way like there's both sides to everything. Like you're never gonna have just the police angry because nothing was going on. Like there's things going on this side and there's things going on this side, and the problem is that both sides don't want to take accountability, so we're not finding a common ground. So one side is demanding ground, and then the other side's essentially demanding ground, but no one's coming together. So that's where I think social media is hurting us, because we're creating so much propaganda for people to be against police and against all these services that they would have called on and been like, please come help me, and now it's kind of like we're just teaching our youth to just forget about all the things that helped us come up. You know what I mean? Like,
and to add on that,
I'm for social media, but you have to be conscious when you're on it. because anybody can post is what I think.
And to add on that note,
Absolutely.
in regards to the police, right? Like, I don't believe in the defunding of the police, because in emergencies, they are the people you need. That could be a life or death situation. If someone's breaking into your house, right? Who are you gonna call? Busters? No, you're gonna call the police. They're gonna be
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Like, they're gonna be there to help you. And like situations where, in terms of mental health, I think there should be like people like nurses or first responders like that to be stepping up for that regard, right? But for criminal activity, I think the police should be involved for that. Like, that's my take on the
Yeah,
police.
so like the way I wrap around social media is just that the pros are that we're spreading awareness and creating education, but the cons are that we're also creating blind followers who are more rooted in hate and anger from maybe past experiences they have than more than like a loving place of let's go forward. So like it has its pros and cons, but we have to just be careful of what exactly we share and what we decide to like follow.
Exactly.
That's really good points. And what I've experienced is that people don't read and they don't understand. They'll see a headline, and you touched on this, right? They'll scroll, they'll see a headline, they'll repost, and so it becomes this huge conversation. But it's a conversation that's not based on, you know, what does the language even mean? I mean, my own experience has been that I'll post something around, you know, this park is opening, or here's the rules around what you can do in restaurants. And if people just went down 3 sentences, they'd see all the answers to their questions.
Yes.
And yet they still ask the question. And so, you know, I do think there's a certain community civic responsibility really to understand and fully read and educate yourself about what it is before you share something. I mean, that would my on all issues, but particularly the one around defunding police. I do want to touch on that because it has come up shortly after the march. Myself and other Halton mayors, and we have the Halton Regional Police, of course, and the mayor of Oakville, Rob Burton, is the chair of the police board. So we all got letters around requests for defunding the police. And when you unpack what is typically meant by that, it's redirecting, as you touched on, Tajaune, supports to mental health, and not asking police to be social workers and crisis counselors and all of those things. And in Halton, we are a little different. You mentioned this earlier, Noah, sort of across the board, the Canadian experience is different from the US. We still have lots of problems and pain points, but the Halton Regional Police budget is half what our fire, library, community social services budgets is. So we're already what is being requested in the US.
Yeah.
Not to say that there's not work to be done. And of course, we saw that video that came out recently from an incident back in April of police acting utterly inappropriately to a young individual. So there's work to be done there. But you know, I do really appreciate the focus on finding solutions. So I want to turn now to your thoughts around where do we go from here? So it's got to be more than talk. It's got to be more than black tiles and listening. Where do we go?
So this is where I want to go with this, with like the change. I want a black curriculum. I want a black curriculum within the Halton District School Board and all the school boards in general, right? Because more curriculum on black history and black experience like will help other black people want to do things with their life. They'll feel more included rather than excluded. And that will show that we're being proactive rather than reactive, right? Like we want you to hire black professionals that actually love to be in that environment and teach us black youth and teach even the white youth and like every single ethnic group about themselves, right? I would love what's called people to be able to look up to other black people as role models rather than looking at the rap and looking at the street gangs and be like, I want to follow that. Like people like LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, for example, right? Kobe Bryant has this thing called the Mamba Mentality, and that's just an instinct where you have to be there. Like no matter what goes through your head, right? You have to be there mentally, physically. You always have to be on your game, type of thing. And that exactly, the Mamba Mentality would help kids like just look at it and what's called wanna. No, can you help me with this? Hop on.
With the mentality, like the reason I think the Mamba Mentality and like not just Mamba mentality, but a go-getter's mentality, seeing from like from black men and women who carried them in ways like that are like more than professional, like they're like transcending, like they're like Martin Luther King. To this day, you're gonna think about him. You know what I mean? Like we need it in schools. So not only are you being taught about black history, but you're also being taught how, like, you're being like almost unlearning the culture that they portrayed us as like gangsters, hip hop, rap,
colonized.
Oh yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
we also want because we also want our community to not play into that stereotype as well, and help our youth, because our youth is going to look first and foremost at people like me and Tajaune. They're going to look at us. What are these guys doing? What they're saying this, but are they going to go do this? So that's huge. Accountability is so big. And when you want to have change and create change and actually make a difference, it always starts with yourself. And what can I do to make a difference? So I think when everybody has that mentality of, okay, I have to be in this, it's up to me to be better, for everyone else. If I'm better and he's better, then we can all be better, like as one. I think that will then that's when we start to see real differences, because like as far as just putting it into schools, like Tajaune said, you need black educators. You need people who are going to make these black kids feel empowered, and not just like, because now it will kind of sway to being like, oh, it's a pity. Like people are just pitying me. They want to teach me because they kind of feel bad. Like, and
Exactly.
the worst feeling is pity. You don't want someone pitying you. You want respect me because I'm human. Don't pity me because I'm black. You know what I mean?
And you don't want you do not want a colonized version of black history either. You don't want them to leave out the truth.
Like, and yeah, let's explore that a little bit in our last few minutes. Yeah, the colonized piece, you've mentioned that word a few times, and I think it'd be really helpful for our viewers to get the idea of what you're talking about.
Colonized is this, okay? Think about patriarchy, male dominance. They came to Canada, Africa, and exploited us to what's called be slaves. For indigenous peoples. They went to their place, took their land, and told people, basically, they made a whole lie about what really went down. They said Christopher Columbus discovered. How do you discover something that's already there? That's how I look at it. In regards to colonization, it's just like, in a sense, male dominance and heteropatriarchy, and people taking and shipping out. People taking from people and basically not giving them a choice, type of thing. In a sense, robbing. In a sense, robbery. But I'm gonna answer your question in regards to the what I want to see change. So I want there to be an annual solidarity march, right? I want programs like Our Community Cares in the Burloak area. There's very passionate workers there that will expand and help out. I want income bias to like not be a thing. So like what's called creation of an anti-racism fund would be great. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you mean by income bias? That's
income
an important
bias
concept.
Sense of people look at you as like the lower food chain because you don't have as much money as them. It's already harder for us Black people to come from the places that we came from, because there's a reason why we came here. We obviously feel like it's safer, but like if we come all the way here from a place that we feel is going to be safer, we do not want to be like yelled at or basically felt like we're lower than other people because of the income we have. We made it here, made it far enough.
Absolutely.
We need to hire more social workers in schools, in the school system, throughout the community. And I also feel like we should hold every year, every summer, 5 open spots for Black people to be able to work. 5 open spots. Because I feel like there's people with
like at the city, you mean?
In the city.
Like you're talking about city services? Yep.
And what's it called? In regards to that, like there are so many Black people that are well educated but that can't get an apprenticeship, a job, because and they are well educated because it's the color of their skin. So like I feel like we should hold 5 open spots every single year for Black people to be able to get that job or that apprenticeship or just that experience. And a Black Lives Matter flag in City Hall.
So we are working on a lot of those things. I think when we talked the last time, we in our budget, City Council approved a year ago work to be done to do essentially an audit on the city around how well we're doing with equity, diversity, and inclusion, and looking at what the makeup is of our community. Is that reflected in our employment? Is that reflected at the electoral level? We know it's not reflected there. That one is a work in progress, we will say, but we've done better on the employment side, but we still have a ways to go. So that work is currently underway, and we will get recommendations for how we can, at the city, be more inclusive and diverse in our hiring, and be more equitable. But part of those conversations are around what other tools do we have to demonstrate our commitment to ending racism of all kinds against our Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community. And so we actually, you probably know, somebody did paint the Black Lives Matter logo in one of our parks, and one of our basketball, I think it was the basketball court at Nelson. It's beautifully done. And so that sparked a conversation for us around how can we make, that'll eventually wash away. How can we make something that's more visibly permanent? And the city just installed a Pride crosswalk as a visible way to show our support for marginalized community based on sexual identity. So we need to find additional ways to visibly show our support for Black lives, for people of color, for Indigenous community. Noah, over to you for some closing thoughts.
I think that's great. I think we should really focus on the solidarity aspect and why we marched in the first place, as coming together. And yeah, I would think it'd be great to put maybe a Black Lives Matter flag, but I think it should be more something symbolized around unity and just us as a people coming together, because Burlington's so diverse.
Exactly.
It's not that we don't want people feeling left out. That's exactly what it is. We don't want people feeling left out. I understand Black people's feelings. You've gone through it for so long, but being part of change, being part of change means taking that step and understanding, okay, I have gone through it, but I don't want others to go through it too. So let's be different. Let's make the difference. Yeah.
Beautifully said, Noah. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Well, we are out of time. This is not the end of our conversation. There is so much more for us to talk about and so many more actions we can take. I want to give a huge thanks to you, Noah Bowen, and to you, Tajaune Saunders, for joining me. Thank you for throwing the light on our community and where we are doing well, but where we really have a whole lot more work to do to end racism in our community. Thank you, and signing off, I am Mayor Marianne Mead Ward. Thanks for tuning in to Burlington Matters.